Hello grade 8, welcome to our science class. This is the lesson 3 and the topic that we'll have today is about properties of acids and bases. Before we start, let us review first the topic that we'll have last week. So the first word here is mixture. So what is a mixture? So a mixture is a blending of two or more substances. So in a mixture, the substances do not chemically combine. Next word is solutions. What is a solution? So solution is a homogeneous mixture of two or more substances which may be solid, liquid, gas, or combination of these. Some of the examples of solutions are your copper sulfate, beer, your sugar solution, because when you stir the sugar in water, you cannot see the sugar. Okay. The next example is your wine, your vinegar, and your Coca-Cola. Next is your suspension. So suspension is a mixture in which a finely divided substance is combined with another substance. So examples of suspension is your flour in water. Okay, so when you dissolve the flour in water, after some time you can still see the flour at the bottom of the water. The same with another example is your muddy water. So for your muddy water, it's also considered as your suspension. It's because after you give it some time, the mud or the clay or the soil will just go at the bottom of the bottle and the water is on the top. So it is suspension because there's a separation of two substances. Next is a colloid. So a colloid is a substance where particles do not settle out and are not easily filtered. So some examples of this are your butter, your cream, milk, aerosols, smog. Smog is the combination of your smoke and fog, inks, paints, and your glue. So those are some examples of your colloid. So next word is your Tyndall effect. So what is a Tyndall effect? It is the scattering of light by particles in the colloid. Okay, though these are the vocabularies that we are going to use for this topic. Number one is acid. Spell the word acid. So A-C-I-D, acid. Next is a base. Base, spell the word base, B-A-S-E, base. Next is carbonates. Carbonates is spelled as C-A-R-B-O-N-A-T-S, carbonates. Next is corrosive. Corrosive, C-O-R-R-O-S-I-V-E, corrosive. Next word is properties. Properties is spelled as P-R-O-P-E-R-T-I-E-S, properties. So let us go to our main topic, which is properties of acid and base solution. So let us define first what is a property or definition of properties. So properties are things belonging to someone or something. So for example, we can have physical properties and chemical properties of a substance. So some examples of your physical properties are your color, texture, odor, taste, hardiness, magnetic, boiling melting point or freezing points. So those are some examples of physical properties. Another example of properties is your chemical properties. So some examples of your chemical properties are your oxidation states, chemical bonding, coordination number, heat combustion, toxicity, flammability, corrosivity, and reactivity. So when you combine these two substances, there will be changes in their chemical properties. So these are some examples of your properties. So physical properties and chemical properties. So each substance have chemical properties and physical properties. Oh, examples of your properties, physical properties. So what are the properties of water? So water has no smell. Okay, water has no taste, and water has no color. So these are the physical properties of a water. What are some physical properties of a vinegar? So smell. So the smell of vinegar is foul smell. Um, it is a liquid, or the vinegar is smelly. It is a liquid. It is clear, and it tastes bitter. So those are some examples of physical properties. So this one is a physical properties of water, and this one is a physical properties of a vinegar. Let us go to examples of properties. Physical and chemical properties. So what are the physical and chemical properties of a salt? So it is a white crystalline. So when you say sodium chloride here, it's what you call your table salt. Okay, so white crystalline solid at room temperature. So the color is white crystalline. It is brittle. It melts at 800 degrees Celsius. It dissolves easily in water. Also conducts electricity in aqueous form, or when you dissolve it in water or when you melt it in water. Okay. Next is what are the chemical properties of sodium chloride or your salt? It does not react readily with other substances, or it is stable or non-reactive. Another physical and chemical properties of a baking soda. So this baking soda, we can use this as a disinfectant, or um, cleaning the drainage we have at home, or even we can use this in baking. So baking soda, the physical property is it is a white powder. So um, the color is white. The powder here is the texture. So for the chemical property, it reacts with vinegar to produce bubbles. Okay, so let us go now to properties of an acid. So we have already discussed what are the properties. So properties, it is the description of a substance or something. Okay. So what are the properties of an acid? Let us define first what is an acid. What is an acid? So acids are compounds whose properties include the kinds of reaction they undergo. So these are some properties of an acid. So some of the properties of an acid, number one, it tastes sour. Okay. Number two, it reacts with metals and carbonates. And number three, it turns blue litmus paper to red. Okay, so those are some properties of an acid. Again, number one, it tastes sour. So the taste is sour. It reacts with metals and carbonates. So this one is a chemical property. So number one here is the physical property. And it turns blue litmus paper to red. So here you can see lemon. So the lemon here is an example of an acid. It tastes sour. Okay. So next property of an acid is your chemical property. So for your chemical property, it reacts with metals and carbonates. So here the nitric acid, which is an acid, and it will react to a metal, which is the copper. So as you can see here, when you pour nitric acid on the copper, this is what happens. The next property of an acid is it turns blue litmus paper to red. So when you dip the blue litmus paper in an acid, the blue litmus paper turns to red. Okay, as you can see here. Okay. So examples of an acid, number one is your hydrochloric acid. So it is used in pickling of steel, used to kill bacteria in swimming pools. part of your gastric juice. It aids in the digestion of proteins, and it can be sold commercially as muriatic acid, which we use to clean our toilet. Another example of your acid is your acetic acid or your vinegar. So for your vinegar, okay, acetic acid, so it is used for um, food additive. Okay, you can use it at home. You can also use this in testing blood in your clinical laboratory. So you can use this to manufacture pesticides, soft drink bottles, rubbers and plastics, inks and dyes, rayon fiber. Okay, so these are the uses of your acetic acid. So the next example of your acid is your citric acid. So some examples of your citric acid are your oranges, your lemon. Okay, so the uses of citric acid, it's for used for food and drink. It is used also as a preservative, household cleaner, cosmetics, and wash cleaners. Okay, your citric acid is a weak organic acid found in citrus fruit. Or example of a citrus fruit is a lemon. It is good and natural preservative. It is also used to add an acid taste to foods and soft drinks. More than 1 million tons of this one is produced every year by what you call the process of fermentation. So when you taste a lemon and an orange, the sour taste is due to the citric acid in the fruit. Okay, so acids react with certain metals to produce hydrogen gas, but not all metals. Again, acids react with certain metals to produce hydrogen gas, but not all metals. So some examples of the metals that react with an acid is your magnesium. So your magnesium is when you dip it in an acid or your hydrochloric acid, so there will be bubbles. So those bubbles are your hydrogen gas. Another metal is your zinc. So your zinc here, when you try to dip your zinc in an acid, as you can see here, you can form when the metal and the acid reacts. So the hydrochloric acid and the zinc. Okay, so when it reacts, it forms a bubble. So these bubbles are your hydrogen gas. Another metal is your iron. So iron here, when you put an iron powder and pour on an hydrochloric acid, it can form bubbles when it reacts. So that bubbles is your hydrogen gas. So when they react, so they here refers to acids. So when they react, so when acids react, the metal seems to disappear in the solution. So this is the reason why acids are sometimes called your corrosive. So corrosive, it means it can burn you. A corrosive substance can dissolve other materials completely over time. So these are some of the signs of how corrosive a chemical is. So these are some examples of your corrosive chemicals: sulfuric acid, ammonium hydroxide, chromic acid, your phenol, acetic acid, hydrofluoric acid. So as you can see here, if you just pour these chemicals in an object, you can see that it will burn or it will melt. And carbonate ions that contain carbon and oxygen. So acids also react with carbonate to produce gas and carbon dioxide. So acids and metal carbonates. So we have here an example. so the calcium carbonate, and your hydrochloric acid. So if you um, join this calcium carbonate and hydrochloric acid, if you combine this one, it will result in producing the gas which is the carbon dioxide. So here the example is your the carbonate here is your baking soda, and the acid here is your vinegar. So when you combine these two, this is what happens. So it releases your carbon dioxide. It bubbles and it forms your carbon dioxide. So let us now go to properties of a base. So let us define what is a base. Bases are another group of compounds that can be identified by their properties. So they have their own properties. What are some properties of a base? Number one, it tastes bitter. So this one is a physical property. Also, it feels slippery, which is a physical property of a base. And it turns red litmus paper into blue. So here the example is one property of a base is a physical property of a base is it tastes bitter. Another physical property of a base is it feels slippery. So some examples of your bases are your detergents, your baking soda, your drain cleaner, your ammonia, soaps, or antacid. So soaps refers to your hand and dishwashing soap. Another property of a base, it turns red litmus paper into blue. So you will know a substance is a base if when you place a litmus paper, a red litmus paper, it turns to blue. Okay, so you know again if it is a base if the red litmus paper turns into blue and the blue litmus paper just stay the same as blue. So some examples of your base are your sodium hydroxide. So it is used to make soap, paper, oven cleaners, and your dry cleaners. Another example of a base is your calcium hydroxide. So your calcium hydroxide it is used to make your cement and your plasters. Calcium hydroxide is also what you call your lime. Another example of a base is your ammonia. Ammonia is found in every household cleaner and it is used to make fertilizer. So household cleaner, some examples of this are your household ammonia, or your ammonia uses for your stain cleaning removal, or it can also be used as a fertilizer. So example of this is sulfate of ammonia. So it is used to fertilize the plants. Another example of a base is your baking soda or your sodium bicarbonate. So your baking soda is used to bake in baked goods. That's why they have bitter taste caused by too much baking soda. So when you put too much baking soda in your baked goods, okay, so you will feel the bitter taste of it. So what are the uses of your baking soda? So it's an antacid. So it is a chemical that smells out of your clothes. So it can also be used in an underarm deodorant, as an underarm deodorant. Toothpaste. It can also be found in dog odors and in urine. Face and body scrub. It helps to soften skin. It relieves skin itch from insect bites when you put baking soda. Okay, it can relieve pain from sunburn. So it helps to relieve baby's diaper rash. It can be your oven cleaner. It can also be used as tile scrub, silver polish, and a drain cleaner. So it is used for cleaning laundry and stains and others. So that's all, everyone. For additional information about our topic, please watch the video attached and answer the quiz in your Google Classroom. So thank you, everyone. Hope to see you soon. Bye.